So as we mentioned, talent is one of the biggest things which we are working on. So we'll start the first piece with our challenge on talent. And we have three panelists. Daphne, who is running her own fintech startup in blockchain domain. Chandrima, who is an ex-banker, wealth manager, and now running her own fintech, and Vikram, who runs his own fund and has more than 22 companies in his portfolio. In order to optimize the time for everyone, I would leave their bios and everyone for you to go and Google them, LinkedIn them, Bing them, whatever you would, and we'll try to jump straight up in the middle of the topics we want to talk. Before that, we'll go to the Slido question we have for this specific panel. Could we get the Slido question up there? So if you guys could just go for the Slido question via the app or go to slido.com with this code. We have this question which we will take up at the end of the panel. I would just want you guys to give your opinion on this question while we have the panel on the talent challenge in ASEAN, and we'll drive the conversations from there. Thank you guys for coming up, and hope you had a chance to look at the report which we just released, and hope you saw the kind of talent questions which we had from our participants. What are your thoughts about some of the talent feedback and questions we got from the startups in the report? Definitely we'll start from you.
Yeah, so I think one of the main challenge is on tech talents. So just giving from my own personal experience running the technology company, JetTrade. So what we did was we actually tried to encapsulate certain technology functions at the control tower, which is in Singapore. And then for projects that we actually do regionally, then we actually localize it to regional teams. So in that doing, in terms of the talent challenge, we found that a lot of investments, we actually have to invest a lot in the headquarters side in terms of getting the right blockchain architect, the right builders for the technology kind of a roadmap. And then for the different verticals of the technology building and implementation, then that's where we actually sub-localize it to the different regions. So for example, let's say right now we're actually doing a project in Vietnam. So where the UX and UI interfaces, then that's where we actually work with our Vietnamese team over there. But for the architecture part, it's still kept within our HQ. Yeah, so I mean for the, there's definitely a talent gap in terms of technology, but I think running a tech company, it very much also depends on expectations. Yeah.
Fair enough. So it's interesting that you have like a diversified team with some specific skill sets offshore and rest in Singapore.
Yeah.
Chandrima, right. Is that similar for you, or?
There are three challenges broadly that a tech company has. Number one is clients, funding, and the biggest one is getting the right people. Because unless you have the right people, whether you have funding or not, or whether you have, it's immaterial. Now the issue that we have found is we made an early on decision not to outsource to any dev shop, to have everything in Singapore sitting next to us, so there is no lost in translation, there is no, there is no margin for misinterpretation of what we or the client needs. So that complicated our issue even further on. So we did not have offshore teams, we did everything in Singapore. So getting the right work visas, getting the right people, getting them settled in the Singapore ecosystem, that has been quite a challenge.
Interesting. And Vikram, so I'll have a slightly different spin of that at the question. While you invest in companies, is that like how much focus is on the talent versus the business model and growth when you decide to pull the plug of funding on a company, like to give or not give? How much weightage is on talent while you do that decisioning?
So let me put it this way. It's like a sliding scale. The very early stage, the focus is almost 90% on the talent.
Okay.
As you go, as the company develops into its own entity, own organism, economic engine, you go later and later to the, let's say, post-IPO company, pre-IPO company, the focus is more on the business model and the sustainability of that model. It's like a sliding scale. That's how one way you can think about it. On day one, what I'm really looking for is the insight that led to the formation of the company. And I look for something, what I call a founder and a venture fit. So many people talk about a product market fit, but I think equally important or more so is a founder and the venture fit. Is this founder the right person to do this venture, right? And that's actually a very difficult question to answer, because a lot of people feel that innovation cannot happen from within the industry, from an incumbent, right? There I really look for what I call second level thinking. So I may have arrived at a problem. Let's say I'm not an automotive engineer, but I want to change something in automotives, right? The most obvious thing everybody will do. But once you start tinkering with it for a while, then you arrive at certain obstacles. How do you get past those obstacles? That's second level thinking, not the not so obvious. Mm-hmm. So when I see a good founder, highly motivated, with a unique insight, which is unobvious, that's a winner for me.
Awesome. So one question which I have is, again, I used to work in a startup myself, which we were always struggling with this, is when you have two options, hiring the best person you know versus hiring the best persons you don't know. Because a lot of times you have a bias because you're always in a pressure, in a hurry to get stuff moving. So you will reach out to circles you already know, which will have a challenge in terms of the background, the outlooks you will get would be very similar to your experiences, because you would go after the people you know. So how do you, when you have to look at startup hiring from your personal experience and your portfolio companies, how do you navigate between hire the people we know, hire the best people we know versus find the best people we don't know, while you are in a rush to actually ship, build, sell?
So when I first started the company, after I left banking after 10 years, so for the last 2 years with running the technology company, I started with a co-founding team with the people that I know in terms of the different skill sets that they bring to the table. That means things that I'm weak in, they are strong in. And then having said that, fast forward to today, we are now hiring the best people that we don't know yet in terms of knowing them long enough in terms of the duration, the relationship. But the hiring process and the selection process is the same. Reference checks, and then understanding their character. I think for our organization, very much we place character above skill set, because you can pay for skill set, but when it comes to startup journey, a lot of times is how you rise above obstacles. Because, especially when you are doing technology development, it is never smooth sailing. It is every day is an obstacle. So actually, it requires a kind of a tenacity that we need in people. Yeah.
So you essentially reached an inflection point that after that point, you would start to look for people you don't know. So there was, what was that point, like 6 months, first revenue? What was that inflection point?
No, there's so much people that I know who will join me. Yeah, so I come from banking background. Most of the people I know are from banks, but we actually have a policy now that our team is 70% tech. I don't need so many business people. Yeah. So.
Okay, fair enough.
Actually, that's the biggest conundrum in hiring. So somebody whom you know, talking about character, that is very important. And actually, very interestingly, about 2 a.m., 2 days ago, I wrote this email to Varun saying about mindset of a startup employee versus mindset in a bank. And I think I wrote a long one. I don't remember what I typed at 2 a.m. So that is the biggest balance in finding what works for you and the mix. And while it is easy, if I work with an ex-colleague, I know how he or she will react in a time of stress, will stand by or not. So that is the easy path out. But what we did at the onset is, and I came from international banks where a lot of stress was given on diversity. The stress on diversity, we used to joke that it looks nice on the brochure, it looks nice on the annual reports, but actually the need for diversity is, if you give a problem to a diverse group of people, who have different mindsets that have been developed by their journeys in life, then the solution that you get is more robust than me and my clone from my bank we come out with. So we were very conscious at the onset, and other than one colleague with whom I go back, ex-colleague with whom I go back about 10-15 years, everybody is from outside, and I knew nothing about them. So it has been hard knowing those people, judging their characters. We have had some big punches on our face, but now I like to believe I know how to hire and what we are doing. Yeah.
So let me give a slightly different perspective as an investor. What if I told you that 1 out of 5 startups have co-founder conflicts, right? So I've seeded about 25 companies in the last decade in India. And the biggest value destroyer in my portfolio is co-founder conflict. Because if I've done my job, I bet on the right sector, right team, right everything. If 2 founders can't get along, the company doesn't progress. It goes into limbo. So when I look at it, I mean, the learning for me is I really want to know how these founders came together. A lot of them will just, I've met people who said we were high school friends, but probably never saw each other till such time they started the company. So I thought a lot about this, and I think the one way to do it is to choose your co-founder like the way you would choose a partner for life. You can be very different people, but you should have same values. Otherwise, philosophically, there is a problem, right? Second is, again, I'm talking more from how you choose a co-founder. Choose somebody you are willing to forgive a lot. Otherwise, you will not get past the first big few hurdles, right? In fact, in my firm, which is an investment firm, we have a value which we say that the first mistake is on the firm, regardless of the size of the mistake. The second is yours, right? But I think that has come to me after 10 years, right? So where I'm going with this is that I think initially choose your co-founder that you can trust blindly. And as your company grows, then choose talent that will keep increasing the average. So every new employee or team member you get should push up the average. So you should visualize how this person will fit. Are they bumping up the average? When you do something like that, it dramatically changes your company.
Do you, when you take investment decisions, when you go to investors, do investors see diversity as a value add when you are trying to raise money? And same back to you, when you are looking at investing, because the diversity point came up, I didn't want to bring it up, but you guys brought it up. So do you guys see a pro or con of it, or it's a check in the box, or it's a value driver for you guys? And similarly, how valuable is that part for you? Start from you guys first.
Okay.
Do you see that helping you while you try to raise money, or you try to sell to a customer?
Okay, to be honest, I'm the only female in my team.
Is that good or bad?
It's good for me so far. Okay, so I'm the moderator in debated discussion. So we have very hot debates when we actually discuss our projects, and I allow that to happen because I'm someone who's very afraid of in-group thinking. I'm so afraid of everyone being alike, and then I don't see anything else that's different or that's worrying about what we actually are deciding on in terms of direction. So when I started raising funds in the beginning, I never actually had the issue of not having enough ladies in the team. At least I didn't hear that as a feedback.
Which is fine. I just wanted to hear your opinion. There is no rights or wrongs.
Yeah, so, but right now, we have a few of our female colleagues as well, like our delivery manager, meaning that she takes care of all the project deadlines, making sure that our tech developers are on time. She's actually a lady, and everyone listens to her, so it's good for me. Yeah, so.
So we are really diverse. In terms of age group, our CTO, he is 55, and the youngest employee is 24, and I'm in the middle, more towards 55 than 24. And then in terms of diversity, we have 6 nationalities with 6 different passports. So, but this is not that I went seeking for the people, because after the first person that I wanted to work with, my ex-colleague, again a woman. It just panned out like that. So now coming to your next question is, how does it pan out when we go for discussion with investors and with clients? I think it is not a checkbox in their whole criteria, but when they see the pictures of team and all of us look really different, they appreciate that. And when we explain that the objective is we all come from different background, different thought process, and the logic path follows a bit different, then they see the value add in that.
Vikram, would you say no to a company which does not have a lot of different pictures on their pitch deck?
No. I think, look, as an investor, my job is to deliver the maximum returns. So I really, for me, the gender or nationality is an afterthought. Of course, keep in mind, I'm investing primarily in India. Everybody is Indian. Okay? But two things are happening which I find very interesting. The internet in India is maturing. And as internet economy is mature, we see the transacting population tends to shift more and more towards females. So at, I would say, US style maturity, 70% of the transactors will be females, at least in e-commerce, right? Now, why is this? If you see the history of civilization and the history of technology, what technology is enabling us to do is to become multitaskers, right? Today you are multitasking at a level you've never thought, even from the time we were teenagers to now, right? And if you think of who are the most naturally, I would say, inclined towards multitasking, even historically have been women. They've had to play so many different roles. So women will latch on to a productivity tool way faster than anybody else. And that's why it's not surprising to see that sites which are really well designed for women do much better. Now, my concern in India is we have a bunch of boys from IIT designing for, some auntie living in a small town. He has no clue. He has some reference that maybe that woman is a little bit like his mother, right? But why is that not a young girl from IIT, wherever, designing for that auntie, That's a big concern for me because, yes, these companies will be successful, but we may never achieve full adoption, right? Like Taobao style adoption or Amazon style adoption. So that is one. Now, that brings me to the next question about, I said, would you care when I see different faces? Frankly, if I talk about the gender ratio, I don't get business plans for women. I really don't. Less than 1% of business plans I have received in the last 10 years have a female co-founder. So it's not that I don't want to fund them. They are not coming in. So I'd like to take a minute here and actually tell you about an initiative I've been thinking about, briefly talk to you also about. So I said to myself, okay, let's look at the evolution of a founder. How does Daphne or Chandrima or somebody like you decide one day? This is not one day you woke up and say, I'm going to be a founder. It's something, the kernel of this idea has been there in the back of your head, somebody inspired you. So I think, what happens is you start with why. Then you come to what, and then you come to how, and then you come to when. Why? Fair enough, you get an insight. What is the product? You get it. For whom? I think where most founders stumble is how do you do it? Now, if you're a bunch of kids from an engineering school, which is mostly male-dominated, it's easier. For women in particular, I think the how is very hard. Because many of them don't come from an engineering background. That's where they stumble. So there's an initiative actually I'm planning to launch. I call it the 8 Fellowship. 8 Innovate is my fund. And I'm going to basically make sure that we're going to invite a lot of young girls from high schools, from colleges, to apply for internships through us to our portfolio companies. This is a low commitment exercise for the girls who are coming in and also for the founders. We're not saying give them jobs. We're not telling these girls you have to be in a startup career. But I want to remove the mindset because in the evolution, there is this friction point. How will I do it? Now imagine you spend a summer when you're 19 years old in some cool startup like, you guys are running. And that girl's mindset changes. Now she's 25, 27, I don't know. And she gets an idea, she's not afraid. So I want to go to the source and change the mindset. And I want to basically have maybe one day 8,000 interns across Asia doing this. I want to turn this into a movement. And why I'm saying I want to really push the young girls to do this, why not guys? Because guys have their networks, the old boy networks. Girls don't. This is the main thing. So we got to do something, but it's going to be a competitive process. So we'll just forward the resume. And then we take it. So we start with 8 girls. I already got actually 2 applications. Already started it.
Very well, very well. So hopefully next year we'll have at least 100 of them by this year. So I'm very aggressive on targets, right? So I'm very, very business guy. Unless the target is a bit daunting, I don't like it. 100.
Everybody in the audience has to help me, right?
So if everyone tells you finds one person for you, you will have your 100, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So 100 is the first target, first milestone 100.
Done.
Okay, done. So let's note that as a record. So next year we'll put you to task to display the number from there.
8 I will do for this for sure. Actually, I'll exceed 8 this year already. But definitely, I'm going to do in multiples of 8.
Perfect. One of the interesting audience question we have on the challenge is, what do you think of weighing experience versus potential? Because specifically, startups will have less runway per se in terms of a corporate can give you 6 months to figure out what you want. The runway you will have in a startup, okay, hit the ground running is much shorter. At that point, you will probably try to find someone who's already doing it or something very close to it. The amount of time you will be able to offer to a person to pivot would be lesser. How do you navigate that?
I take a more extreme view. For me, it's definitely potential because it's about being able to do very well in extreme uncertainties. So for me, experience can be learned. In fact, if you actually unlearn it and relearn, it's actually much better for me. So.
But how will you measure potential? Experience is easy to measure. Potential is tough to measure. As your gut feel or what? How do you measure potential?
I mean, being the CEO of a company, I think I've quite a good way of assessing people actually until now.
Secret sauce?
Yeah. Huh? No.
Secret sauce?
Maybe it's a female instinct. Yeah, so I think for me, it's very important that the person does not box himself in. Because if someone comes with a lot of experience from, example, a corporate environment, they tend to get very boxed in and not being able to see out of the box. So yeah.
Would you navigate, Chandrama?
I will not answer that question. The only thing I would say is my lack of female instinct. I hired somebody quite recently thinking he has infinite potential, and after 3 months, I wanted to put a bullet inside my own head. So it's hard. It's hard, and there's a huge luck component. Sometimes you need the experience because you cannot expect them, irrespective of potential or perceived potential, to just come in and say, oh, I know this, Ivan. There's a huge element of judgment. And in a corporate, because you've got layers, you've got hierarchy, your judgment can be tempered with your colleagues or with your superiors. But in a startup, a lot of decision making is left to individuals who could be quite junior in terms of the number of years have. Because startup is where you've got the freedom to learn, decide, pull the trigger. In a corporate, you cannot do that. So that's the mindset. So we do get it wrong, and it's a hard one, but there is no saying that experience is not important, because your judgment comes in from experience. Your judgment comes in from the rough patches you have been through.
So that's very interesting. So one person on potential, one on experience. Which side do you land?
Look, you look at all the companies which have created more than $100 billion of wealth in recent years, they were all started in dorm rooms. They had no experience, from Google to Facebook, right? Maybe Steve Jobs actually even started not in a dorm room, but in a garage, some experience. So there are some amazing Yahoo. So there are a lot of great companies which have been born. But I think it's a very, very difficult question if you're just looking at an employee. What I look for is signaling effects, right? Look, if you went to a really competitive school, and if you could throw away your key to your bike or your car and just do nothing but study for 2 years and get into a top engineering school, you have discipline and you have hunger, right? After that, if you were able to get into a very competitive job, and then even if you have 1 year experience, that's fine. That means you're going through these societal filters, right? And so your trajectory is telling me that you're a really hungry person and you're a learning machine. That's it. That's the way I look at it. I'm not looking for much more than that.
So, since we are nearing the end of time, last question. if you were to unwind and restart and fix something, change something on what you have done till now, what would that be? If you could go back the clock and change, what would you change if you could change something? Anyone can start.
Actually, no, we have been through a lot. We have been through co-founder trouble. We have been through unwinding of JV. We have been through wrong hires. We have been through, the whole tech stack that crashed. We've been through anything in the last 2.5 years that usually as startups do. But if we look at the learning, if we just distill the learning from each one of those incidences, there is nothing I would do otherwise. Nothing. I would make the same mistakes again because what we learned is invaluable in those 2 years.
Okay.
Launching a VC fund now, I should have done it 10 years ago.
Okay. I would take that as like, well, figure it out. We'll talk next year on what did I learn from that or not. So thank you so much, all of you, for this. Really appreciate. Thank you for joining us. All of you will start our next panel in next couple of minutes. We'll just get the next panelists up and there soon. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for having us.